Sire script with a minimum of 500 words, focused, high quality, and without any fluff. This is written in a faceless video narration style, tight, emotional, and introspective. I didn't even notice how far apart we'd grown until the silence started feeling normal. My husband was still the same man, polite, hardworking, predictable. He left early, came home late, and always asked if I needed anything. But somehow, the question felt more like a habit than care. We didn't argue. We just didn't talk about anything that mattered. The space between us wasn't loud. It was quiet and cold. The kitchen faucet started leaking one night. Nothing serious, just a slow drip, like a soft, steady reminder that something needed attention. I told my husband. He said he'd get to it over the weekend. He didn't. So, I called someone myself. David showed up the next morning. I wasn't expecting much, just someone to fix the pipe and leave. But when I opened the door, something about him made me pause. Not his looks exactly, though he was attractive in that rugged, no-nonsense kind of way. It was more how calm he seemed, grounded, like he wasn't in a rush to be anywhere else. He asked about the leak, nodded without much small talk, and got to work. I went about my business, wiping down counters, pretending not to glance over every few minutes. There was something steady in the way he moved. He didn't fumble, didn't sigh, didn't complain. Just worked with quiet confidence, like he was fixing more than just a pipe. I offered him water. He accepted with a simple thank you. His voice was low, warm, the kind of voice that lingered a second too long in your mind. We didn't say much, but when he looked at me, it wasn't rushed or distracted. It felt like he was actually seeing me. I couldn't remember the last time I felt that. The leak was more complicated than expected, so he said he'd need to come back the next day. I told him that was fine. He wiped his hands, nodded once, and left. The door clicked shut behind him, but the room still felt like he was in it. I stood there, staring at the sink, thinking about nothing and everything. That night, I lay next to my husband and stared at the ceiling. He turned away after checking his emails, mumbled good night, and fell asleep within minutes. I listened to his breathing, steady and detached. I wanted to reach out, but the gap between us felt too wide to cross without breaking something. I told myself David was just a plumber, just a man who came to fix a leak. But that didn't explain why I noticed the shape of his hands or the way he looked at the photos on the shelf like he actually cared who we were. Or why the house suddenly felt warmer when he was in it. It wasn't about the pipe. Not really. That was just the excuse. Something inside me had been leaking for a while. I just didn't know it until someone else noticed the water on the floor. He came back the next afternoon, toolbox in hand, quiet as before. I opened the door before he knocked. I told myself it was just because I heard his truck pull in, but that wasn't the truth. I had been watching from the window, waiting. I hated how aware I was of myself when he was around, how I stood, how I smiled, how I spoke just a little softer. This time, the conversation came easier. He asked about the framed art on the wall. I told him it was a local piece. He nodded, said it reminded him of something his daughter once drew. I hadn't known he had a child. He said her name was Mia. She was 13. He rarely saw her. Divorce, distance, time, all the usual excuses people gave when things didn't work out. But his voice softened when he spoke of her, and I saw something behind his eyes that was hard to name. He worked under the sink again, cursing lightly at the corroded joints. I laughed, offered him coffee. He accepted. I watched the way his fingers wrapped around the cup, steady, certain. He sipped without rushing, thanked me with a glance that lasted longer than necessary. I looked away first. We talked more as he worked, not about anything profound. Books we liked. The quiet of early mornings. I told him I used to paint. He asked why I stopped. I said life got in the way. He said, sometimes we forget the parts of ourselves that made us feel most alive. I didn't answer. I couldn't. When he stood to test the faucet, our hands brushed. Just for a second. But the second stretched longer than it should have. We both paused. Not enough to make it obvious, but enough that we felt it. He didn't apologize. I didn't step back. The air shifted. I knew it, And so did he. He asked if everything looked okay. I nodded. He lingered a moment, then said, "If anything else comes up, just call me." His tone was casual, but the way he looked at me wasn't. Something passed between us, unspoken, but loud. I didn't know what to do with it. That night, I sat in front of the mirror, brushing my hair like it made a difference. My husband came home late. He kissed my cheek, asked if the plumber fixed everything. I said yes. He didn't ask anything else. I realized then that I could vanish into another man's gaze, and my husband wouldn't notice. I replayed everything. His voice. His hands. The way I smiled without meaning to. I wasn't proud of it. But I didn't stop thinking about it either. I wanted to believe it was harmless. That it ended at the door. But deep down, I already knew something had started. And I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. It was a Friday when I called him again. The radiator in the guest room started leaking. My husband had left that morning for a weekend conference. I could have waited. I should have. But I didn't want to. I told myself it was about the leak, but the lie felt thin even in my own head. He arrived in the early evening. His shirt was slightly damp from the rain. He didn't say much. Neither did I. But something between us felt louder than ever. He set his tools down, and I offered him a towel. Our fingers touched again. This time, neither of us looked away. He worked in silence while I sat nearby. I wasn't even pretending to be busy anymore. I watched him. Every quiet movement, every breath he took. He looked up once and caught my gaze. I should have looked away. I didn't. Neither did he. When he finished, I offered him a glass of wine. He hesitated, then nodded. We sat across from each other at the table. The glass in his hand looked too small. He didn't drink fast. He wasn't nervous. Just present. Grounded. Unlike anyone else I knew. He asked me how long I'd lived here. I told him 7 years. He asked if it felt like home. I said, some days. He nodded like he understood. Asked him why he became a plumber. He said he liked fixing things. Said it gave him peace to take something broken and make it work again. I didn't know why, but that answer made something inside me ache. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "You always seem like you're waiting for something." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like he was reading pages I hadn't shown anyone. Then he said quietly, "You don't have to keep pretending." The words hit me harder than I expected. My fingers tightened around the glass. I didn't answer him, just stood up and walked to the hallway, unsure if I wanted to escape or be followed. He followed. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. When he touched my arm, I didn't pull away. When he kissed me, I let him. It wasn't rough or rushed. It was slow, deliberate. Like he was asking with every movement, and I was answering without a word. I thought I'd feel shame in that moment. I didn't. I felt alive. Seen. Held. I felt like a version of myself I thought was long gone. The bedroom door closed behind us, but what opened was something I can't name. Every touch, every breath, felt like a question I had buried for years. And I answered all of them with my silence, my body, my surrender. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about him. It was about everything I'd been missing. Everything I had stopped admitting I wanted. And once the line was crossed, there was no turning back. The morning after felt too still. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, only reminds you something has shifted. He was already gone. No note, no message. Just the faint scent of him on the sheets and a silence that pressed in from all sides. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, trying to gather pieces of a version of myself I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed. It was my husband. A photo of his hotel breakfast and a quick "miss you." I stared at the screen longer than necessary before replying. "Hope it's going well." He sent a thumbs up. That was it. No questions. No hesitation. No suspicion. He trusted me completely. And for the first time, I didn't know what to do with that. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, trying to meet my own eyes. I looked the same, but something was different. There was a weight in my chest that wouldn't move. Guilt sat there, yes, but so did something else. A strange, sharp clarity. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't even wanted it, not exactly. But I couldn't deny it happened, or what it revealed. I thought about the night before. Not just the act, but the way I felt afterward. Not fulfilled. Not happy. Just real. For once, I wasn't playing the part of a wife, smiling through routines, answering questions with half-truths. I had stepped outside the line, and though I knew the cost, part of me didn't regret it. He texted once in the afternoon. Just 4 words. I hope you're okay. I read it twice and never replied. What would I say? That he made me feel something I'd forgotten I could feel? That he broke something in me that probably needed breaking? Or that I used him just as much as he used me? My husband came home the next day. He kissed my forehead, dropped his suitcase in the hallway, and asked about the radiator. I said it was fixed. He nodded, poured himself a drink, and turned on the TV. That was it. No suspicion, no questions, no pause. I watched him from across the room. This man I had once loved fully, now more of a habit than a presence. He looked up once and smiled. I smiled back. My body responded on cue, trained by years of repetition. But inside, nothing moved. Nothing warmed. I cleaned the sheets later that evening, not because of guilt, but because I couldn't bear to sleep in them as they were. The smell was gone. The evidence too. But the knowing? That stayed. I wish I could say it ended there. That I made a decision. That I felt remorse strong enough to change something. But the truth is simpler. I went back to my routine. I said nothing. He never asked. And somewhere deep inside, a door stayed open. Slightly. Quietly. Just enough to remind me it had once been walked through.